How's it going, everybody? Welcome to today's video where we finally go back to Thermaltake and check out their products. Now, right here on the display in front of you guys, in front of the camera, we have 4 products and we will cover the 5th one additionally and in a separated video because it's already inside, but we'll get to that part. So we're having today Thermaltake CERES 300 TG ARGB case, which is in Snow White version, and I really love the design and everything that comes with. We'll get to that part later on. Then we have the Swafan AX14 RGB. We have the Thermaltake Tough Power GF-A3 1050 watts 80 plus gold. And of course I think these are newer models of RAMs. These are Tough RAM XG RGB D5, which are 6200 MHz DDR5 on CL32. Now, they look quite outstanding, I do have to say. Really love the design, and it's something that you don't see every day with the special heatsink and addressable RGB at the top, looking quite nice, I do have to admit. But regardless of the products, of course, the power supply is fully modular, and the Swafan AX are designed that way so they are magnetically connected. And that's outstanding because you have only one cable running out, and that's quite nice for cable management. But the main show today will be about CERES 300 TG ARGB. That is, I would say, a smaller case than you're used to in terms of the MIDI factor. And when we take that into consideration, I was expecting to place a 360 at the top. Now, this brings us to the next scenario. It actually has clearance 398 millimeters in the chassis, but you can't place the radiator inside, unfortunately, on top. So this brings us to the point where you could place 240 or 280 AIO at the top, and it has enough clearance with the VRM heatsink, so you don't have to worry about that. Currently, I placed 2 Swafan AX 140 at the top and 1 at the back, and I didn't want to place the Swafan AX12 on front on the AIO because I wanted to get performance from the AIO as it comes from the box. So what we got here is a 360 on front, or you could go with 240 or 280, logical, right? And you can go with 140 or 120 fan at the rear. Now the case is fully ventilated. When I say that, it has opening here on the power supply, which has a dust filter. The same thing goes on the other side, but the other side panel is removed with 3 screws, 3 thumb screws, and you take out the whole chassis, the whole side panel basically. Here we have tempered glass, one panel, then we have this front part, which is another panel, and the mesh part, well, basically the whole part with the dust filter, is additional panel which you remove with 2 thumb screws. It kind of gives more air to the power supply and the bottom chamber, which is quite alright. It either does exhaust because of the front fan on the AIO, but it can also be an intake. I mean, it all depends. Generally, the power supply is pulling the air from the bottom, and which also has a dust filter. So yeah, since I mentioned dust filters, we have 2 dust filters on the sides, one of each, one beneath the power supply. Then we have this, let me just show you. This is a magnetic plastic cover that has a dust filter on top, and it's quite easily removed. It's magnetically attached to the top, and on the front we also have a dust filter. Now the front is, for some of you guys, might be tricky to remove because it has those a bit annoying crocodile clips that really hold the front chassis a bit too strong. There are limits where I would say, okay, this is too weak for holding the front panel. This is a bit too strong, but I wouldn't take that as a negative thing. You just have to press the clips and push out the front panel. It doesn't take out the IO panel. The IO panel stays here on top, so you get a complete free access to the front, right? And the dust filter goes with the front panel. Just one more thing, the silver part here, the gray part, not the silver part, the gray part here goes with the front white part as well. So take that into consideration, so you don't just push this white part here, you have to push the whole part out and then it goes, that's it. Now the top power supply shroud is also full of holes just for better airflow, and it has additional holes on top. I don't know for what would they be used. because the ones here near the PCI brackets are definitely for the vertical GPU mount, because at the back you can rotate the PCI brackets and have a, as I already stated in another video, a natural position, a natural vertical mount coming directly from the case. So you don't need a vertical GPU bracket, you just need your riser. And I think this one goes at the same way. It kind of, I think this would be holes for the bracket if you want to keep the GPU stable in a horizontal way. So yeah. On the side right here, we actually don't have anything. And it's just flat part with additional holes for the side fans on the AIO, and that kind of brings us to everything. You can't place an E80X motherboard because you can't push the 24-pin cable through the rubber grommets, but honestly I don't think this case was intended for E80X motherboards. So all in all, quite cool. At the bottom we have actually 3 holes on the power supply shroud for cable rerouting, and it's quite alright. I mean, in general it's really nicely designed case which gives you loads of options. You can't remove the top, you have to, if you're placing 240 or 280, you have to manage it somehow here and give you an option to place it. One thing that I noticed that I haven't seen so far, and this is quite a, for me at least, a positive shock, but for some of you that are still using hard drives, you'll be, let's say, slightly disappointed because there is no hard drive cage in this case. And I totally support that part. If you want to use hard drives, I know it's an additional cost and additional expense. I would suggest going with an NAS on the side and not placing hard drives here. Cable clutter, no airflow in the basement, in the compartment for the power supply. But then again, you get much more space inside here to reroute the cables. I know some of you guys would, if for instance you have a hard drive cage from other cases, from other manufacturers, you would remove it to get more space there. But this way it either lowers the cost, it's immediately removed, you don't have to hustle, because some hard drive cages are really a pain to remove from the basement, from the power supply shroud. So yeah, it kind of goes both ways depending on what are your preferences, but I really like to state that up on front. Now, when we're talking about the whole design, we have here the full white build with black PCI brackets. We have the gray part on the front, and that's about it when we're talking about it. It's a quite nice case, definitely something different, and I would say an upgrade from their past cases, because this one is visually really nice, I have to admit, and really love the additional aesthetics here with this part right here. So yeah, now when we go into the thermals, I placed the Thermaltake Tough Liquid Ultra 360, which has an LCD screen, and that's why we will have an additional video just for that. But for now, just the cooling part, we have AMD Ryzen 5 7600X and the RTX 4070 Ti Supreme Max. Now, in AIDA 64 Extreme Edition, what I got for the GPU is 65 degrees Celsius. So the front fans really do their work and they cool down the GPU without a problem. Then we have the CPU in AIDA 64 Extreme Edition, 80 degrees Celsius, and clock speed going up to 5450 MHz. Basically, when we take that into consideration and compare it to all the other benchmarks that I did for other AIOs and cases, that is perfectly normal. But when we go to Cinebench R23, the temperature on the CPU goes up to 81 degrees, which is still in the borders of normality when we're talking about this CPU and other benchmarks and other AIOs and everything else. The clock speed 5350 MHz, which is again in the same bracket, but the score is a bit lower than usual, and it goes lower by 200-300 Cinebench points. So it started at 13,815 and it eventually builds up to almost reaching, it did reach at the last benchmark, 14,000. So in those terms, it performs okay. It gets the stability done because I didn't have any going ups and downs with performance, and this has nothing to do with case. If they had a different AIO or a different cooler, you might get better results or worse results. It's not about the case, it's more depending on the cooling, and the flow of air through the case is outstanding. So that's it, don't get me wrong. We have here an outstanding airflow through the case going without any issues. The AIO, on the other hand, has a nice LCD, and this is how it performs while cooling the AMD Ryzen 5 7600X, but we'll get to that part later on in the other video. I wouldn't take that as too much negative. It's going down about, as already stated, 200-300 the Cinebench points, but regardless of that, it kind of gives additional LCD screen for thermals. You can place your graphs, whatever. I'll show you that in that video. And 200-300 Cinebench points comparing to other AIDA 64 benchmarks when we're talking about the thermals and the clock speed and everything else. It keeps it stable, and that's also important to know. All in all, I'm quite satisfied with the case, I do have to admit. Really nice design, and that's basically all. The power supply is quite easy in terms of it has a dedicated 12 VHPWR cable, quite easy to connect all the cables and all the other stuff. Some connections in some other power supplies were a bit harder to push in, so this is why I'm mentioning it. The RAMs, the Tough RAM XG RGB D5, look, well, you see them from close-up, so there's that. And the cool thing about the fans is the connectivity. It's quite straightforward, they magnetically connect, but a cool way to connect your fans and do everything that you need to. That's all there is to it. If you're interested in these products, first of all, and the main actor of this video, the Ceres 300 TG ARGB, the white version, I'll place the link in the description below, as well as the Swafan X14 RGB and the RAMs and the power supply, so you could combine everything and create something similar to what I did, if you're interested, of course, in that kind of stuff. But before we go to those links, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and click the notification bell for future content. Thank you guys for watching. See you very soon. Bye bye.